The minute we left air yesterday, it was the busiest football transaction deadline day in the history of the sport. 10 trades, and the Miami Dolphins are all in. And
F them picks, Dan.
Man.
F them picks.
They have said, we've got the top-rated quarterback, we've got an exciting offense, we've got an old owner who has had nothing but messes at every turn in his life, and in his life as Dolphins owner, I should say. And now they are saying we are making the moves to counter the Buffalo Bills. We need to get pressure with 4. We're trading a first-round pick. That's a lot for Bradley Chubb. Pass rushers are tough to come by. They get rid of Chase Edmonds and replace him with a guy from San Francisco and Jeff Wilson. And I don't know if they should be all in, but I'm not going to condemn them for finally having a reason to hope and finally having a fan base that's excited. It seems short-sighted, but I'm not sure that short-sighted isn't the move right now with your audience craving something that feels better than the last 20 years.
And I don't think that they've really mortgaged too much of their future because ultimately they're going to have Tua as their quarterback for at least the next 2 seasons. And so as long as you have him on a relatively cheap deal, why not? You're not going to draft his replacement after how well he's played this year. He's more than earned his role in next year's team. You feel like you have a chance to compete, and I think Mike McDaniel probably looked at, and the numbers are very clear as to what their 2 deficiencies are. Getting pass rush with 4, they're a bottom 4 team in the league and getting pass rush with 4, and they can't blitz like they used to because they haven't had their healthy star corners all year. That's actually been the low-key part of their defensive struggles is they haven't had Byron Jones healthy and Xavier Howard has missed games. And then from an offensive standpoint, I actually think it's funny. So we've talked about Mike McDaniel as struggling to get this running game online. He hasn't been able to do it so far. And yet, if you look at the numbers, the advanced stats, the Miami Dolphins actually have a running game that is creating chances for their running backs. Their running backs just aren't taking them. If you look at the stats, there's a stat called rushing yards above expected. The Dolphins are dead last by a mile in the league. They actually have the 2 individual running backs that should be averaging the most yards per carry based off the blocking in the scheme. So Mike McDaniel is actually doing his job, and he's basically saying, I'm going to get a running back in that will do his job.
I think an interesting point you make, Dan, is like, oh, are they all in? Should they be all in? I'm sure Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel's looking across the AFC being, man, this was going to be a tough conference when the season started. And they're looking around saying, who's really the competition? The Chiefs and the Bills? Is that really it?
And the Ravens, I think.
Okay, but you beat the Ravens. You beat the Bills.
In fluky fashion, but yes.
Okay, but
both in fluky fashion.
Both in fluky fashion, of course. But if you already beat those guys and those are the people above you, you're like, hey, I think we can make a run to the Super Bowl.
Let's address our weaknesses and let's go for it.
Who was in the Super Bowl last year? The Bengals. Were they the best team in the AFC? No, they just got hot at the right time, had pieces that mixed, and all of a sudden now they're not there too. Jamar Chase is out. Like, this is an open AFC.
Edmonds got traded the moment that he missed the hole that was available to him that got McDaniel criticized for 4th and 3, up 16-10, not kicking a field goal.
Did McDaniel text you that stat, Witty, to repeat on air?
No, I saw it was going around yesterday on the internet, the NFL Next Gen Stats stat, and there's this really funny graphic that somebody put up which compared actual yards per carry against the NFL Next Gen Stats expected yards per carry. Chase Edmonds averages 3 yards a carry. He was expected to average 5 yards a carry. On the continuum of NFL running backs, he is by far the worst in terms of that stat. He's left, according to this stat, 100 yards on the table this season. And no other team has left 100 yards on the table this season. It's kind of insane. So to me, the idea that the Miami Dolphins actually could have a good running game if someone just went in there and did their job, I think it's kind of cool they went on and attempted to at least address their 2 primary issues.
How do they calculate that?
So, I mean, at NFL, I actually don't know how good this stat is. It sounds cool. No, and NFL Next Gen Stats is behind it.
Not cited either.
But they basically sort of determine based off blocking, based off scheme, based off runs, and they have presumably thousands and thousands of runs of worth of data. They determine that an average running back would get 100 more yards than they have. It's sort of like expected
quantified shot quality.
Exactly.
In basketball.
In the NBA, yeah.
Let's talk about what they did, though. Chase Edmonds gets traded to San Francisco, and they're getting a guy from the McDaniel system. I'm assuming that Jeff Wilson is going to be a piece. If McCaffrey can fit immediately in San Francisco, I'm assuming that this will be an easy transition for Jeff Wilson. It's a recreation of what San Francisco did without these receivers, right? This is an offense that is as explosive as any in the league. And the thing that I wanted to ask you guys, and I wanted to ask Amin as somebody who works in a front office, a lot of people are pointing out either one of the following: that allowing San Francisco to trade up for Trey Lance, what the Dolphins got for that was Hill, Waddle, and now Chubb with the picks that were available to them. Another way that it was put is that for Laramie Tunsil, because Laramie Tunsil ended up dropping in the draft because of the gas mask marijuana thing, Laramie Tunsil, when he gets traded to Houston, has then resulted in not just, circuitously, not just Hill and Waddle and Chubb, but also Holland. And if I tell you that those are the players that you're getting with the first round picks, if that's the kind of production that you can get, you're right, Witty, when you say the Dolphins aren't doing this for 5 years from now. They're doing it for the years when they have the value at quarterback because Tua is cheap. They are doing it for the next couple of years of an 80-year-old owner's, more than 80-year-old owner's life. He's desperate to be somebody who's a winner. And when you're trying in the offseason and making a mess by going after Tom Brady at 45, you see the desperation in this. And I don't think it's bad to be desperate. I just don't think that still they're as good as Buffalo.
Well, which is the ultimate kind of hole in this plan. If they were in the NFC, I think they could have very easily vaulted themselves into being a genuine contender. You're basically only competing with the Eagles at that point. But because you have Buffalo and Kansas City in the way, and also Buffalo represents a division. So the Dolphins, even they could have an amazing season. They go 12-5, 13-4. They'd still spend the entire playoffs on the road. And that is a concern for me in this all-in plan. But I don't think you can question them at all. This was sort of in some ways the genius of the tanking plan. They only really had to tank for a year, and they traded Laramie Tunsil. They turned him into 2 first-round picks, and they kept basically giving themselves lottery tickets. If not for the Tom Brady investigation resulting in them being docked a first-round pick, they would still have a first-round pick. They've given up basically the capital from 2 trades, Laramie Tunsil and Trey Lance. And those 2 trades have been unbelievable for the Dolphins, both in terms of building out their core and giving them the chance to go all the way in. They nailed the Tyreek Hill trade. The Bradley Chubb trade, I think, comes with some real concern. He only played 25 games in his first 3 seasons. Genuine health problems. Has only really lived up to the talent in this season. Pro Football Focus, I think, has him as the 3rd best edge rusher in the league this year. His pass rush win rate from ESPN is very high as well. So I think that Bradley Chubb doesn't have a huge track record, but he's been good this year. However, you are basically given all this latitude by 2 trades, which were absolute steals for the Dolphins. They've turned themselves into a genuine contender off the back of, let's just cash in our bad team into something that can provide real yields in the future.
Dan, I want to explore something with you. You said, but they're not as good as Buffalo. Given where this franchise has been over the last 15 plus years, like, isn't not as good as Buffalo a high water mark? Like, why are we? It's reminiscent, to be honest with you, when the Heat went out and got Jimmy Butler, and you guys were like, well, Jimmy Butler's not going to lead you to the championship, so why do that anyway? And I said, well, you got to do it because you're moving towards that. It's not going to be a home run. You got to get there bit by bit. It sounds like the Dolphins are trying to get there bit by bit and know they're not as good as Buffalo. But in that sport, where all you got to do is be better than them on one day, I like it. I like the aggression.
I don't mean it as criticism, though. It's just an observation I'm making. Of course, they can win in one game, and I'm agreeing. I don't hear a whole lot of people saying, I don't hear anybody saying that they shouldn't have done this. I don't want to be the one poo-pooing it.
They've already done it. beating them in one game. One game scenario. I'm with Amin. It's a great move. And in a one game scenario in the playoffs, why can't the Dolphins beat the Bills? Of course they can.
I want to caution you on like waving that victory around. It was such an uncommon, weird fluke.
It was a win.
Maybe the next one will be fluky. Maybe it will be snowing in Buffalo, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Dan.
I mean, let's set a point spread for it right now. Dolphins at Buffalo. 8, 9.
What's the wind gust? What's the wind chill? I need
No, it's a big
information.
factor. You're right. Yes.
I don't think it's that high, Witty.
You don't think so?
No, I think it's 5 or something like that. I don't think the country or most people think that's not an indictment, man. Buffalo looks like the best team in the sport. When Tony says all they have to get past is Kansas City and Buffalo, it's like all you got to do is get past King Kong and Godzilla. It's like they're really good teams.
Because you'll probably have to beat them both. Because if they go into the playoffs, having not caught Buffalo, they're 2 games behind them in the division. I mean, in retrospect, Tua getting hurt is going to be a huge part of their season because they lost to the Jets, a game that they should not have lost, in my view, if they were healthy. And they lost to the Vikings at home. I mean, that's a defensible loss. They're 6-1. But I think if they were healthy, they have a good chance to win those games. You need home field. The Dolphins absolutely need home field. Going to Kansas City and to Buffalo, I think it's a lot. But as a fan, just purely speaking, as a Miami Dolphins fan, this is incredible.
Correct.
It's so cool as a fan base to be like, you know what? I'm going to put aside my worries for the future about quarterback. He's playing well this season. You have an unbelievable scheme that is designing good offense for 2 unbelievable dynamic talents at receiver. And maybe they can fix the running game with this trade. They're attempting to solve a problem with pass rush. Maybe at some point they'll get Byron Jones back to full fitness so he can help this team. You have all the pieces there to be a genuine contender. And as Amin said, given where the Dolphins have been, this is great. Like, I'm just going to enjoy the ride of these next 9 games and making the playoffs, because I think the Dolphins have certainly cemented themselves as a playoff team with this trade. This shit's going to be amazing. And they're for me the team to watch in the last half of the season.
Isn't optimism fun?
Yes.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, yesterday was the day I sort of flipped the switch to optimism. Not because I definitely think these trades are going to work out. Running back trades don't always work. You basically say, I'm going to take Bradley Chubb and move him from this defense where he's been successful to this defense and he will therefore be successful. Neither of these trades might not work, but it's a signal that the Dolphins think that they can win, that Mike McDaniel is confident enough to be like, look, man, I know that I can coach run game. And I know that Chase Edmonds is costing me looking like I can coach run game. I swear I can do it if you just give me a running back that just does his job. That's all the Shanahan offense needs. It's not get me the best running back. It's get me the running back that executes the scheme. And so if he feels that level of confidence, I can't help but just go into this with unbridled joy. Bring on Chicago this weekend. I can't wait to watch the game.
I refer back to the Shawshank Redemption when I say hope is a dangerous thing. Hope drive a man insane.
Especially with this godforsaken franchise.
Well,
but
what does Dolphins
Roy
fan
Bellamy.
Roy think about all of this, Roy?
Hope is a dangerous thing. They will make the playoffs, I believe, but God damn it.
Even if you're not sold on the trade, though, like Witty said, you want your team to be making deals at the trade deadline to at least signal that they have some belief in the team doing something in the postseason.
And they made the biggest deal on deadline day. They did. They made the biggest deal. They had put themselves in position to contend for the AFC.
And there's no like, we're holding out for a quarterback. You're 5-3. There's no, we're hanging on to our future draft capital. You're good now. Who gives a shit? Like, it's not like you're not trading away your picks into the foreseeable future. It's just 2022 or 2023. Like, you don't have a first round pick next year. You have a second. That's fine. But you're not going into several years beyond that because you have so much from the Trey Lance trade. They turned it into Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb. That's unbelievable.
I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but sometimes draft picks don't really matter. Like, you got a guy in the first round, and he's not that good, and you're I just wasted this.
I think the Los Angeles Rams are learning this year that draft picks matter like a little bit.
Yeah, but they won a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, you could say
They
everything.
exchanged that for a Super Bowl.
Right. You can say it's all worth it.
They matter if you're good at evaluating talent in the draft. Some teams and GMs aren't as good as others, so there's always a trade-off between this guy's proven, he's a few years older, he maybe isn't the best player, but he's a sure thing versus we could draft someone even better with this high up pick. but they might end up being a bust. We might not get the right guy in the draft.
Well, Jess, in this exact scenario, like the Steelers traded Chase Claypool because they didn't think that he was worth what they got him for, got a second rounder for him. The Bears are like, we're going to get a better, more qualified player than somebody we're going to get in the second round.
Yeah,
like, I think that just the optimism of picks is more important than the actual draft pick itself.
I think the Bears-Steelers trade is a good example of that because the Steelers historically have been really good at finding receivers later in the draft. Right. So they're pretty confident they can do something with that second round pick that the Bears haven't been very good at picking at that position. They need someone there. I doubt if anyone in this room, aside from playing fantasy, would be able to name more than one Bears wide receiver. They need help there.
Smetty, I was wondering how that felt to have a guy traded from one of your favorite teams to another one of your favorite teams.
It's a weird feeling. Also, he went to Notre Dame, so I'm a fan of his since college. And it was weird, Stugotz. On the one hand, I'm like, I got a wide receiver. On the other hand, I'm like, I got a second round pick. And then I was like, oh no, one of my favorite players left. And then I was like, oh man, I gave up a second round pick. Really confusing thoughts for me.
It's like when you have your phone in your one pocket and your keys in the other, and then you like switch them back. Like, oh yeah, now my keys are in this pocket, my phone's in the other pocket. Much better.
Unbridled joy is what Whittingham just expressed, and he did it, and it was soaked in a bit of starch. The saying,
I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, I don't know how to do this.
That's just Whittingham.
I'm new to this. Teach me joy.
He's always so
I'm unfamiliar.
Teach me joy.
Can you help me out with this? I don't know what this is
He's
like.
a lifelong Dolphin fan. The Dolphins, I don't know the last time, maybe when they traded for Ricky. Like, I don't know. Maybe Dante Culpepper, but it hasn't felt like this.
When you traded for Tyreek Hill earlier this summer, you guys were saying the same thing.
I'm talking about this year. I'm talking about everything they've put together this year.
I still had the Tyreek Hill. How many skill position players have the Dolphins screwed up on? Like, how many times where it's like it's not even necessarily the player's fault. The Dolphins just infect with Dolphins to really good players,
Witty.
And Tyreek Hill has been incredible this season.
I can pinpoint for you the birth of optimism for this season. It wasn't when you got Tyreek Hill or any of that stuff. It happened in the second half of that Ravens game.
That's when
optimism was born for Dolphins fans. Because it went from, oh, see, I told you, to, oh my God, what is this? This guy's throwing it all over the field, and this amazing comeback win on the road. And that was the moment where it's like, why not us? I could see it in every one of you guys' eyes. That
and they
glimmer.
beat Buffalo the next week.
Oh my God, what a time that was, huh? But optimism, man. It's a fun thing. It's an elixir. Roy's right. It's a drug. You know what you do when you get drugs, right? You get high. Don't let Roy ruin your buzz.
Hey.
Get high on this supply of optimism.
But Roy's worried about the crash.
The crash is going.
Look, man. No one it's 9 p.m. We just got to the party. No one wants to hear about how tomorrow's going to sound.
To me,
Enjoy
there is
it.
genuinely no downside because you're doing this with the 40. You're doing this with the 49ers shit. You're not even doing it with your own shit.
Yeah.
Like you fleeced them in a trade.
Not even my drugs.
Jalen Waddle has been a great player. Like, people had to go with
high
them
right now.
for not getting Chase. But like, would you rather have Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb or just Chase? The Dolphins. The Dolphins.
That's not fair, though.
What do you mean that's not fair? You've turned those first round picks.
That's different math, though. That's different math because you would be really excited if you had Jamar Chase.
I know, but it's not in a vacuum, right? The Dolphins' brilliant management on those picks.
Did that feel weird to say?
Yes, it did. I didn't know how to say it.
Well, you also are doing your hands
I
with your
know
hands.
what I'm doing.
man.
I can't
You're
control my
holding
hands.
your hand.
They're not great sports
Do me a
radio
favor,
hands.
shake out your shoulders and
Do some
like,
jumping
push them
jacks.
back.
Do some jumping
Yeah.
jacks in the back, yeah.
Red leather, yellow leather. Red leather, yellow leather.
Your hand, you're pointing it at us like you're holding a skull in Macbeth.
I might have been doing the Italian.
Whatever that is.
Well done.
I mean, I want to ask you philosophically something because I saw some video yesterday of Mike McCarthy as the Packers coach many years ago, and he was being asked, what does trade deadline day feel like around here? And he paused, and he's like, I thought it was next week. That's what it feels like around here because they don't do anything. So they've got the two-time MVP in his late 30s, the reigning two-time MVP, and philosophically, they would never do what the Dolphins did yesterday. They need a deep threat. They could use a Brandon Cooks or somebody. They could use somebody that could run down the field and create some separation. Philosophically, what do you do with the idea that one team is saying, absolutely not. We're not in the game of all in, even though our quarterback is late 30s and the reigning MVP. We're not getting him any help while the Dolphins do this.
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. Number one is they're 3-5, right? They're not good. I mean, we've seen them. It's not just their record's not good. They haven't played well. So at some point, you have to almost punt on the season, I think. I mean, I don't know. How much longer is he under contract? Did he just sign that new deal? So 4 more years?
I think 2 more years after
2 more years?
After this year. You can't punt on you're paying him $50 million a year. You can't punt on any season you have left with Aaron Rodgers. You can't do that.
I mean, but it's you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. I don't know. I mean, particularly when there is a known desperation about you. If I have a wide receiver to peddle to the Packers, you think I'm going anything less than price gouging on you? Hell no. I know you guys need it. Look at your record. You guys getting your ass beat left and right. You lost to both New York teams, right? I'm gonna fleece you. And so if you're the Packers, there's a part of this where you have to say, well, do we want to get marginally better? This is slightly similar to the conversation we had about the Lakers yesterday, which is, let's do this deal. All right, name the wide receiver that would have been available, right? Not Tyreek Hill or someone like that, but someone who's available. Give him to the Packers. Are they better than this team? Are they better than this team? Are they better? Not really.
In the NFC, I think you can make the argument, though.
Could you?
Yeah.
Could you be better than the Giants? Yeah.
Well,
could you be better than the Bucks? Yeah.
Not better than Seahawks.
Apparently, the Packers and the Bears were both bidding on Chase Claypool, but the Bears were able to eventually get him because they gave up more. So it drove up the trade price, which I think is great if you're a Steelers fan and a Bears fan, but if you're the Packers, you get nothing out of it other than you still have the players you have and your picks, but is that good enough to win the division? No. The Vikings just traded for Hawkinson yesterday, so they've gotten better. They're probably going to win the division now. If you're the Packers, you've gotten nothing out of this first half of the season.
Or as I like to call him, Hawkenstein.
Nice.
Great man bun. Just a
He
great,
really does.
great lettuce.
A great flowing head of hair.
And then there was the Cooks thing. Brandon Cooks was out there, but he's on a way more expensive salary. A big commonality between a lot of the big trades is a lot of the guys are still on rookie deals. And yeah, you have to extend them, but they're sort of contracts that you can handle as opposed to having to take on a contract and having to have all that cap space. But I think for Aaron Rodgers, I mean, Green Bay in some ways is being disciplined about what they do. They don't get into trade deadline stuff. They don't do this. It's just like the urgency is there from Aaron Rodgers' age to everyone watching them going, if they just had a receiver. I think receiver is probably the hardest position to trade for midseason, to like have him learn an entire playbook either in a week or in 3 weeks. Like, I don't think you really see the value of a receiver trade until like week 12. And then maybe for the Packers, it's too late.
The Chiefs just went out and got Kadarius Toney from the Giants, who is an all-star player. If he can actually get those snaps, like last year, he was dynamic with the ball in his hands.
But
they went out and traded for him.
Though,
but the Packers could have done that. But the Packers could have done that. I know, but the Packers could have done that. They could have gotten Kadarius Toney, and he would have been a massive game changer for the Packers offense.
But here's the deal, Tony. So there's a couple things. One is, as I said, the desperation of the Packers. The price for Kadarius Toney is higher for them than it would have been for the Chiefs. The other thing is the Chiefs are in the other conference, so the Giants don't have to worry about aiding a team that they might see in the playoffs.
You say that, but Hawkenstein was traded inside of the division by a Lions team that doesn't.
And I disagree. I disagree with Witty's wide receiver evaluation. Go run a post route. I'll just chuck it up there. I'm Justin
Run
Fields.
a 9 route. How about that?
Go out there and just run down the field. I'll chuck it up, catch it.
But I want to ask. I mean, I want to understand philosophically. You're explaining why it is that Green Bay doesn't want to do anything like that now. And I'm just talking about entrenching yourself on, we don't do this. We're stubborn about don't do this.
Philosophically don't engage in trade deadlines.
Like, what is that?
They don't take receivers in the first round. I mean, they have these weird rules. I mean,
that is weird. That is weird. I like the mission is to construct the best roster possible to give yourself a chance to win. It doesn't say you got to do it by the draft. It doesn't say you got to do it by free agency. It just do it. So if you have an opportunity, an avenue to improve your team, and you, as a default rule of thumb, oh no, we don't improve our team that way. That sounds like you're like going into a fight, tying your arm behind your back, saying, "Oh, I don't like punching with my right hand." Well, you're gonna get your ass beat.
There's a number of NFL teams, though, that have those like things that they don't do, and the Steelers are one of them. Like historically, they don't trade up in the first round of the draft to get players until they did, and they had to, because when they drafted Devin Bush, they felt that they needed a linebacker in that position to replace Ryan Shazier after he got hurt. And I think it's very silly to be like, oh, we don't do that, because yeah, you don't do it until you have to, and then all your silly little rules don't matter.
Seemed like they had to this year, though. Like it seemed you're going to waste
I
an
agree.
MVP.
If their reason for not doing it is like, oh, because we just don't, like, what does that do for you? You're going to lose your division now.
What do the Packers do? Because they don't trade at the deadline. They don't draft receivers or offensive players in the first round. Like, what do they do outside of develop talent that they think is going to be good? They had a good track record of that.
They have great quarterbacks for 25 straight years that
That's
allow
it, though,
them
right?
all
That might
lose
mask
your
all their other
championship games.
organizational failures.
Yeah, but it gets you 10 wins a season on average because your quarterbacks are better than everybody
But-
for 25 years.
I think we are being slightly harsh though, because like there are organizations that have hallmarks, right? Like Pat Riley, for a million years, never had really much value for first round picks. He's like, I'll trade a first round pick. I'll do whatever I have to do in order to win now. And the other thing that I believe they just changed for the first time in 25 years, they drafted an international player in the first round. Pat Riley was just, I don't do international players. Think about the market of international players that Pat Riley could have ostensibly left behind because he's just saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to draft an international player. Now, it hasn't, they've still managed to draft really well, but of course, there are organizations that have philosophies where, yeah, it might take them a while to change them, but this is what we believe. I imagine the Spurs won't sign a certain type of player.
That's different, though. That's different. I think there's a difference when you say our system does not allow for guys that haven't gotten over themselves. That's the way Pop puts it, right? It's different when you're Pat Riley and you say, I don't want to wait for guys to develop into stars. I want to go out and get whales right now, and then I will fill it around with whatever we do. I think that's very different from, hey, we need help. This is a window of opportunity to get help, and say, no, I'll do it on my. Like, you're basically saying, no, this roster is good enough. But again, my belief would be, given how their season is going and given the struggles they're going through, they probably wanted to do something and they just couldn't get a deal that made sense. Like, we want to get better, but not exorbitant prices. It's like, when you go to the top of the Empire State Building and you want to buy a bottle of water, it's like $7.50. Like, I'm thirsty, but I'm not going to pay $7.50 for a bottle of water.
They're gouging you up there because there's nowhere to go for a long time.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course they are.
it's the
takes a
airport
long
too.
time
And the
to get
elevator makes you
downstairs.
feel like you're going to puke because it's
Yeah.
going so fast. You're spinning, spiraling up 90 stories.
Who likes
the
that?
water.
I
Really?
like it. Yeah, when I went in the Empire State Building, it was like you're almost like bracing yourself when
It's
you're going over. It's
scary.
like,
The elevator is the thrill ride.
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
good. I like it.
I like it.
Put it on the poll, Roy, at LeBatard Show. Is the elevator the thrill ride on the Empire State Building? I want to get to the Heat in a second. I urge you, if you want more football coverage, that concludes our football coverage for the day. But Stugotz, Mikey A,
Wait, what about the college football playoffs?
and
Yes.
God, I don't care about that made for television thing that they do with the rankings that changes every week. I really don't.
TCU at number 7, robbed.
LSU at 10?
Yeah.
I mean,
Who's
two
Clemson
losses.
played? Ridiculous.
They have 3 ranked wins, Witty.
Michigan were really punished for their non-conference schedule.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have canceled the series with UCLA.
But they'll play Ohio State.
But I mean, non-conference schedule, you got to get punished for that. At a certain
Well,
point.
they were punished, but they'll play
Yeah.
Ohio State. The winner of that game gets into the playoff.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
ultimately,
it.
if everyone wins their conference, they'll be fine.
Regardless, if you want to check out more and better coverage of the football stuff, God Bless Football did an overtime episode. Billy Gill, it knocked him out for today. He was working too hard, trying to corral Stugotz, trying to corral Adam Schefter, corral Golick. It's on the feed, and you can get a lot of instantaneous coverage from the trade deadline. But before we work over to what it is that happened in the Heat game, I just want to be clear on something, Roy, because you are a Dolphin fan. Are you going to be the voice that gets out there? I have not seen a lot of people saying anything negative at all about what the Dolphins have done, because hope rings eternal, optimism rings eternal. It has been an endangered species around here for 20 years when it regards football and the professional football team. Are you willing to go out on the brink and say, I don't like what the Dolphins did. I don't believe in hope. What they've done is mortgage the future. They should be more patient. They should be more like the Packers.
No, I will not say that. But I will say I'll believe it when I see it.
Okay.
You're basically your stance is, and honestly, it's not a wrong one from the last 20 years. Just the Dolphins could do anything, and I assume it will go poorly. Right?
But but if you've gone from I don't believe in Tyreek Hill to unbridled joy and not knowing how to express it and not knowing what to do with your hands.
Dan, we figured out how to use Tyreek Hill. Like we didn't mess that one up.
You have a coach?
We got that one right. Holy hell. I think I might have a coach. At the very least, he can scheme some offense.
I can't believe that Greg Cody is going to be right when all his homer picks. I don't know if he's going to be right about them winning the Super Bowl, but he did say their two receivers were going to have unprecedented seasons.
Well, they are.
I know. That's what makes him right, Stugotz.
Hold on.
I said the Super Bowl.
That's what I was going to say. Let's explore this. What happens if they win the Super Bowl? I'm not talking about for the Dolphins or for the city of Miami or any of that. No one cares about that stuff. I'm talking about for this show. If Greg Cody and Stugotz get to sit here for an entire year talking about, it's more than a year probably. They'll talk about this for the rest of their lives, about how, remember, we said they're going to win the Super Bowl, and Dan laughed.
Witty's not going to be allowed to go to the parade. We already decided he's not allowed to celebrate the Super Bowl if they win because he's been so mean to Tua.
Yeah.
Oh,
Chris told us that on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
You're out.
Your optimism right now, see, what you just heard right here is that
trying to get back on the parade float.
The dealer's telling you no. You cut off, buddy.
Oh, there's nothing he can do at this point.
Also, I mean, Stugotz certainly made the Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl to cup his hands to his ears to the local audience. It was not based on any premonition of the Dolphins season.
It's unfair.
You don't need to undercut him at 5-3 yet. You can do it later in the playoffs. Billy is in the shadows. He's not here. We should call him, even though he's been debilitated by the amount of effort that God Bless Football took yesterday. But we should ask him to make a ruling on whether you're allowed to feel unbridled joy. I don't think that
it's my unbridled joy. You don't get to determine if I feel unbridled joy.
No, Billy decides. He does.
No, he doesn't.
Yes,
it's my joy. You don't get to take my joy. Dan, I've never had this. This has never happened to me in my entire life. I'm 30 years old. Let me have this.
This joy sounds a lot like anger and bitter resentment coming out right now.
I don't know how to. I don't. Is this how other people experience joy? When you get joyous, how does it come out?
Pretty much the same way.
I mean, I was surprised. Should I not have been? I was surprised.
I mean, that laugh was so funny.
I thought it was funny that he consulted Roy.
To play that back later.
Is that a Suey nominee?
It should be, yes.
Oh, thanks.
I was surprised yesterday that they got that call on replay.
The Curry one?
When
what a great challenge.
The game is 112-109, and Miami is getting, late in games, which is an Achilles for them, they're getting a lot at the rim. They're going at Klay Thompson and getting a lot at the rim. They're going at Wiggins and getting and ones at the rim. And then Steph comes down, and you're terrified of him. You're terrified of his range. You're terrified that he's a player that doesn't have precedent, and you appear to foul him. And I thought it was a foul. And then they go to replay, and I just am never expecting them to overturn that. And so if you didn't see what happened, Jimmy got a piece of the ball and then hits Steph on the hand, and they do hand is part of the ball. That's not supposed to be a foul, but almost always on Steph Curry, that's going to be a foul, and I was surprised to see it upheld.
It was a high five, Dan.
It's a high five. So...
Or not upheld, but the challenge ended up overturning the call. Should have been 3 free throws, which are automatic for Steph. And it
was a big swing in that game. It was.
And Spoelstra is saying that he trusts his players in that spot. So he just did it because Jimmy said he should do it. But even after seeing the replay, I'm saying to myself, they're not going to overturn that.
So the play happens. They call a foul. Jimmy and the rest of the players on the court are irate. And the best part is, I don't know if there's any video of this, but because I'm there, I'm watching Spo. And Spo has a big grin on his face, and he's just staring down the bench at the assistant coaches. And he's kind of giving that look like, should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? And Steph gets to the free throw line, and he's like, should I do it? And then right as the ref grabs the ball and is about to like, replay, and the crowd goes wild. It was great theater. You know how some coaches in the NFL just throw the challenge flag, and then some of them do it with panache. Like Spo did it with panache last night. Then I went to the Kerr presser afterward, and they asked Steve Kerr, were you surprised? And he said no, because he said he got ball first, and then typically when you get ball first and you get hand after that, they don't call that a foul. So he wasn't surprised by that play. He was a little surprised that there was an out-of-bounds call shortly thereafter that Billy Kennedy overturned, and they never went to the replay. And Steph says, aren't you even going to watch it to make sure? And they said no. So that was kind of crazy.
The ball clearly went off Draymond.
I just assume if Steph shoots an air ball, though, that it's a foul. He's been fouled.
Or somebody blocked it.
Right.
I mean, that's what happened.
Well, weren't you questioning Jimmy's defense yesterday as he goes out and you weren't?
I was questioning the Heat's defense.
I know, but you said Jimmy's 33 and a year older. And,
right, but the idea is not about those moments. The idea is that every night he's going to be locked down. Every possession, like you can't have that. There's got to be better. And by the way, last night, you know what got them in that game? They went to a zone. They zoned up, and
it was that and Duncan Robinson.
And
thank you.
Hold on, Duncan Robinson. And are you guys ready for this?
Why? Thank you.
I mean, Duncan needs to get back in this rotation because he could have nights like that, Dan, where he gets your team back in the ball games. I've been saying that forever.
You have been.
Yeah,
this is a preview
day one.
If the Dolphins win the Super Bowl. There's a lot of thank yous in your future, Dan. Stugotz, you know why Duncan Robinson had the game of his life last night?
Because Hero got hurt?
No.
Oh.
Because, are you guys ready for this? Bam Adebayo showed up to play.
Wow. Amazing.
Bam. He said Bam.
Bam Adebayo. And you know why?
Because he was playing against an undersized center and Draymond Green.
No, because
slow down on that
that hasn't helped him. Undersized centers hasn't helped him thus far in the season. No, it's because, and get the look at me Louis sound ready. It's because the Heat listened to me and said, look at me, Louis. Yesterday on this show, what did I say? I said they've got to, in my opinion, take the ball out of Kyle Lowry's hands, put it in Bam's hands, let him play like he did before Lowry got here, where he was the main play initiator. They did it, and all of a sudden, two things happened. One, he's a lot more engaged, but two, Duncan Robinson woke up like Marty McFly when his parents kissed at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. Like, oh my God, I'm alive again. And look at the picture, and him and his brother and his sister, they're all whole again. That's what he looked like last night because he thrives off of all of that action, all of that dribble handoff and fake backdoor cut and split action. All that stuff comes to life as opposed to when you treat Bam like a big, and now it's Kyle Lowry pick and rolls and all that, and Duncan Robinson standing in the corner. So, in retrospect, Stugotz, let me join you. No, thank you. Right? Let me get my thank you.
Well done.
We should be thanking you, right? Thanking you for fixing the Heat.
Thank you, Amin.
How many times?
Amin. Thank you.
How often do you imagine in your life that you have used the phrase "the enchantment under the sea dance"? It's comedically perfect as a phrase, and I'm just curious how many times you've used it since that movie in
Since 1985? 8 billion times.
As many times as I've gone to Rocky.
Did everyone else watching the Heat Warriors game learn of the existence and then immediately become terrified of Ty Jerome in 40 seconds?
Yes.
That period when he hit that three and then took one from 7 feet. I'm like, who are these people that are going to destroy the Heat? And then Poole made one from a huge distance, too. I thought the Warriors were going to run away from it at that point when they were up 8 in the fourth.
Yeah, the zone all of a sudden choked them out, and they couldn't, what they were getting done in the first half, the Warriors, was a really nice high-low action where the guy flashes to the free throw line and the other big is on the baseline right there in the short corner, and they were doing that, and that worked. And then in the second half, they just couldn't figure it out for some reason. The Warriors have it tough because offensively, other than Steph Curry, there's no one who's consistently out there that you can rely on. Everyone else is kind of up and down.
Maybe Wiggins. Not
and
Clay,
down.
that's for sure.
Clay started bad, then he went hot, then he went cold again, and it's tough, man.
What you're paying Poole for, though, no?
Yeah, well, you're not paying him yet.
Well,
That hasn't kicked in yet.
you'll eventually
Hasn't been
be
great
paying
this
him for
year
that.
either.
Poole?
Yeah.
Up and down also.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's not these guys are bad or not playing well. It's just they're inconsistent. But Ty Jerome, I was talking about this with my buddy. Ty Jerome's black. You guys know that, right?
No.
He's black. Ty Jerome's black. His dad's black, right?
Oh, okay.
So Ty Jerome, so we're starting to come up with the whole roster of players that you wouldn't know are black, but are actually black in the NBA. Ty Jerome, Isaiah Hartenstein for the Knicks, and then Tyler Johnson, who's not in the league right now, but he's black too. And I just started to like have this image of like, can I do a whole starting lineup of guys that you thought were white but are actually black?
Can you?
Well, I know who can coach them.
Mike McDaniel.
Exactly.
As soon as I tell the audience no more football coverage from us, Ross Tucker and Andrew Hawkins show up to ensure that we're going to be talking football.
And Amin disappears.
Amin vanished from the premises. I want to read Andrew a quote here from Tom Brady as he and Gisele Bundchen divorced. She told Elle magazine, "This is a very violent sport and I have my children and I would like him to be more present at home." And Brady is quoted on his podcast as saying the following, because I don't think you can do what he does part-time. I think it makes it very hard to be present at home or anywhere. He says, quote, "I haven't had a Christmas in 23 years. I haven't had a Thanksgiving in 23 years. I haven't celebrated birthdays with people that I care about that are born from August to late January, and I'm not able to be at funerals, and I'm not able to be at weddings." None of that is surprising to you, correct?
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. I mean, that is what comes along with the sport. I mean, there was 1 year when I was in the NFL, I got to go to a funeral, and I was there for no kidding. I landed, I went to the funeral for an hour, and went right back to the airport to get back to practice. Like, that is the life that you live.
And it's different for a quarterback than it
Yeah.
is. He's got more, even more, correct?
Yes, even more, especially your Tom Brady. When I went to the Patriots, it was like, I retired from the Patriots. I don't know if you guys know that, but I was there for like 5 weeks, and I was like, okay, yep, I'm done, I'm out, right? But when I got there, I was like taking. I had a notepad. I was taking notes on everything that I seen in the facility, the way the coaches talk, the players, and Tom Brady. We went to the first walkthrough, and he was off in the corner by himself doing like whatever hip drills and like mimicking taking a snap in the corner. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. He's like prepping. Well, we're in this walkthrough for like an hour, and he did it the entire time. And I got sad because I was like, this dude, what is he going to do when football is done? Because you could so visibly see this was everything to him, right? And this was 5-6 years ago now. So no, those quotes don't surprise me at all.
I think he solved that problem by playing forever.
Yeah,
That's
he's
it.
like, I'm never going to stop.
By being immortal, and what's he going to do? By not stopping. By telling him, what's it going to be when he stops? He's like, no, I'm not going to stop. You're going to stop.
That solves that.
You were made sad, though, by seeing him an hour just taking fake imaginary snaps.
It was like the totality. Like, we'd be in practice, and he missed a throw maybe once every 5 practices. Jimmy Garoppolo missed a throw every 2. Jacoby Brissett missed maybe a throw every practice, which was all 3 of those rates compared to me coming from Cleveland. I was like, wow, these guys are good. I mean,
Even Brissett, you're
we
saying.
couldn't get through a period in Cleveland without 3 missed throws from every quarterback. And so, but when he would miss a throw every 5 practices, he would cuss himself out. Like, he'd be mother effing himself. And that's when it was like, I always give the equation of the Step Brothers movie when they show up in the tuxes and the guy thinks it's funny, and then about halfway through the interview after someone rips one, he's like, okay, now the suits seem kind of effed up. That's what it kind of felt like. I'm like, it was legend when I got there. Then as I watched Tom, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I care about anything in the world as much as he cares about this. Especially after all the money he's made, all the accolades. It was just like, it's tough. And even now, his middle age years are playing out while he's still playing. He's dealing with things that everybody deals with, every player, every person deals with. It's just no one's ever done it at 45 and still playing in the NFL. So it's just an interesting concept.
Let's bring out Ross Tucker here. His football podcast is presented by DraftKings. You can get it wherever it is you get your podcasts. And what did you find? I'll ask you in a second about the time that you were traded, but what did you find interesting about what was done yesterday in the league, the most active football day that we've seen at the transaction wire?
Yeah, and by the way, Dan, first of all, thanks for having me. Big fan of what you guys do. And just to echo what Hawk was saying, because I was in New England in 05 and 06 until I did the opposite of Hawk. I got traded to Cleveland from New England. Brady, in 18 years of playing football, I never met a guy that cared nearly as much about the quarterback center snap. Like, Dan, I'm a center, right? It's the first thing you do every practice. It's really boring. You bend over, the quarterback puts his hands in your butt, and you snap the ball to him, okay? You do it your whole life. Never play with a quarterback that cared nearly as much about it as Brady. And this is like spring OTAs. He would look at me and say, Ross, you and me, great snap first, great snap first. And here I'm like 26 years old, 27. I've started a bunch of games. But when he said that to me, I was like, okay, Tom, okay. Like, he is the biggest, like, in his psycho head, and I mean this as a compliment, the perfect snap that makes like that awesome noise when the ball hits the top hand, he wanted that sound every time. Like, just to piggyback off what Hawk said, that's how much of a psychopath that guy is. He wanted the perfect snap sound every time, because in his mind, that gave him like a fraction of a second more time to look at the defense or throw the ball or whatever. So everything Hawk just said, I can totally back him up on that. As for the trade, I thought Bradley Chubb and Chase Claypool were probably the two most interesting. Bradley Chubb going to the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins right now are probably like tier 2 in the AFC. Obviously, tier 1 being the Bills and the Chiefs. I kind of think the Dolphins, Dan, looked around and were like, you know what? We got Tua playing really well. He's on a rookie contract. And if we get one more guy in here, a guy like Chubb to rush the passer opposite Jalen Phillips, maybe we could do something. Maybe we can be like the Bengals last year and go on a run in the playoffs. Maybe we're not quite where Buffalo and Kansas City are right now, but with Chubb, maybe we can give it a run for the money. So I thought that was really interesting that the Dolphins clearly felt like they wanted to go for it, and that this year with Tua still on his rookie contract was the time to do it.
Don't you kind of feel like the Dolphins are putting a master's class on like being a GM in front office and what you actually do when you get those kind of picks?
Well, what's crazy, Hawk, is looking at what they've done with Tua and those receivers. I'm crazy impressed by Mike McDaniel. I mean, look, the last 2 years, the jury was way out on Tua, way out. And so what did Mike McDaniel do this offseason? He's like, all right, he's really accurate, doesn't have a big arm, but he's smart and he throws with timing and anticipation, and he's pretty good on crossing routes, middle of the field stuff, as opposed to having to throw it out past the numbers. So what does he do? He gets Tyreek Hill, who nobody can hang with on the in-breaking routes because he's too fast. Next thing you know, Tua has the best quarterback rating in the entire NFL. Like, that's coaching, right? This is coaching. This is front office. Look at what a player does well. Get other players that help accentuate those positives, and then design plays that put what the quarterback does well with the receivers. And that's why the Dolphins offense is what it is right now. That's what's so cool. And what's so frustrating for probably guys like you and I at times, Hawk, I played for 5 teams, right, in 7 years. And I think I had 9 head coaches, 9 offensive line coaches, which is hard to do unless you're bouncing around a lot. And so many coaches just don't do that. So many coaches like, this is my system, and my system works. And we're going to thank goodness the Dolphins, for Dolphins fans at least, they got a coach that says, let's just take what the kid does best and run the whole thing around it.
Most coaches are like that. And to your point, if only somebody would have seen this in Mike McDaniel early and made this call. I did, just so everyone, for the record. Right now, it's a high stock, so I'm going to make sure I get my credit.
No,
until,
you did.
You're fitting in well, I got to tell you.
You worked with him very early, correct?
Yes. And that's what exactly what Ross said is all the things that Mike does really well.
That's crazy to me that you guys who come from this system that's so disciplined about everything, that the ego would get in the way of the leadership that way. It seems stupid to be a leader who says anything opposite of what you guys are saying. The job is to take the strengths to mask the weaknesses or help improve the weaknesses and find the strengths of the people who are your employees.
I think I've done decent in life, and I think Ross is the same way because I'm very self-aware. I know what I am and what I'm not. And so when I could look at my body of work and see someone who puts me in the best position and gives me the highest output, Mike thrives off of that. Like, he wanted to get Tua. When everybody said, oh, Tua can't do it, Tua's not this, doesn't have the arm strength, those are the things that excite Mike because he wants to solve an equation that nobody else can by going to get a ton of receivers who are incredible at yards after catch so that Tua doesn't have to do all the work all the time. He can put them in position. They do RPOs, play action, get Tua outside of the pocket. And it's not just with Tua because eventually they'll have a new quarterback. Eventually they'll have more pieces. And that's where Mike is really, really good because the X's and O's of it all. It's just if you can get an organization to get over the quirkiness, then you're going to reap the benefits, and that's what the Dolphins did.
I just can't believe that you're both saying, Ross, that this is
something that seems so obvious.
A rare thing.
No, it's wild.
It doesn't even make any sense to me.
Yeah.
You got to fit into my system.
I mean, Ross, back me up here. Now, I want to get your input here too, but the majority of NFL coaches I don't want to say they're not trying to win because everybody wants to win. The more important thing for them is keeping their jobs. And so you put yourself in a position to always be able to blame the other person. That's work 101. We all deal with that no matter. You leave enough ambiguity to make sure you can blame it on someone else if it goes bad and, give yourself the credit if it goes good.
Hell yeah.
That's 99% of coaching. So,
and what's really funny about to me, Hawk, is that most of the systems these guys run, they're not even necessarily the best system. It's just the system they learned.
Yep.
You know what
exactly.
I mean? Like, it's not even like this is the system we should be running. It's just this is what I know. This is what I learned. Now I'm the head coach or now I'm the coordinator. So this is the system we're going to run. And then they spend 2 or 3 years trying to get players that fit their system. But in the NFL now, if you're not good in 2 years, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
So they never even get it. They never even get the guys that fit their system because they lose so much the first 2 years. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you remember this, Hawk, from New England, but I will give Belichick credit for this. Now, Belichick's a fascinating case study in leadership because anytime I do like a speaking engagement, they'll always ask about Belichick. I don't know if you were there long enough, Hawk, but it's 100% negative reinforcement.
Yes.
I mean, Dan, Stugotz, the first thing
tired.
They do at 8 a.m. every day is show the 5 worst plays from practice the day before. And Belichick just makes fun of whoever messed up.
Yeah.
So your motivation there is to not be on one of those 5 plays.
terrible.
But
It's
I
all
will
you
say
think
this.
about.
Dan. It's coaching.
You think about it the entire practice too, like, don't mess up, don't get on Bill tube. And you know who gets it the worst? Tom Brady.
Right.
Oh, he was pissed. He was pissed. I'm sorry to cut you off, Ross. The exact quote Bill said was, defense safeties, I told you need to be off the hashes in cover 2. Luckily, we don't have a quarterback who can hit the broadside of a barn. Otherwise, this would have been a touchdown. It was Tom Brady he was talking about. This is like year 15.
You know what I thought was interesting? To Dan's point, if I can't remember where the sign was, but at one time it said that they have 2 signs. One was like availability is more important than ability. And that's in the training room, right? So like you're in the training room.
So get out of the training room.
Get out of here. And then the other thing is consistency is more important than ability or something like that.
Yep.
Like if you suck at pass blocking, okay, like I probably did, they just want like whatever you're good at, be good at that. Whatever you suck at that, because in their mind they can coach around that, right? Like they can. But if you're sometimes a good run blocker and sometimes not, they can't coach around that.
Mm-hmm.
So what they want more than anything else is they want players that are consistent because they believe that they can put you in position to only have to do the thing that they know you're good at and not do the thing that they know you stink at. I thought that I never heard 5 teams, all those coaches, nobody else ever said that. Like, just do what you do. Be consistent. We can coach around your weaknesses.
This bummed me out, though. It made me feel a bit bleak that Andrew has told us before that he gets to the Patriots and he realizes while working out with another young person that young person wants it more than he does, cares more, has a hunger. And then the first 5 things that happen in your morning is Bill Belichick being negative, and you look over there in the banquet hall through a walkthrough and Tom Brady's taking a 1 hour of imaginary snaps. And you're like, bleep this, I don't want to do it anymore.
There was a time in my life where that would have got my juices going, man. That would have. Oh, I'd have been in there talking like Macho Man Randy Savage. Let's get to it, yeah.
You got to him too late.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it's too late. I missed this window of spending an hour in the corner doing things that I did my freshman year in college.
Ross, can you tell us, because this is you tickled Stugotz. Stugotz, I'm sorry that we haven't gotten to this earlier, but you said something that Stugotz stood up, his eyes got real big, and he got very excited.
You were talking about tiers, and no one loves talking about tiers more than I do, but you had the Dolphins in the second tier in the NFL, or the AFC, I think, and I'm wondering, I want to know the tier inside the tier. Like, where are they? Ahead of the Ravens, the Titans?
What are the tiers?
Are they at top of the second tier? Where are they?
What's the first tier?
So those are the 3 in the second tier. But I do power rankings every Tuesday on the Ross Tucker podcast. And second tier, I'm going to go Ravens, Dolphins, Titans. So you're in the middle of you're smack dab in the middle of the second tier is the Dolphins, because the Ravens made a big move too. The Ravens got Roquan Smith from the Bears. It's interesting that
that'd be great if he could play wide receiver. I mean,
well, and you know what too? In the NFC, the only team in the top tier over there in my mind is the Eagles, but then the second tier, like the Vikings, they got Hawkinson from the Lions. So what yesterday basically was a bunch of tier 2 teams being like, you know what? Maybe if we get this one guy, maybe we can be good enough in the playoffs in January to win a couple games and do some damage, maybe even get to the Super Bowl.
Is there such a thing as a piece away? Like, is that a thing?
I played for the Browns, Dan. I don't know.
Odell Beckham. You're always several pieces away. You're right, Hog.
I don't. What the hell would I know?
Okay, fair
no
enough.
idea.
Ross,
by the way, Dan,
I read about it in books.
Dan, to Hawk's point, I got traded from the Patriots to the Browns, like during training camps. The Patriots had won 3 straight Super Bowls, and I'm out there at training camp. And they don't put me in for the last period of practice. They put the other guy in. I'm like, that's weird. And I asked Scarnecchia right after practice. He says, Tuck, evidently we just traded you to Cleveland. And I had already been cut 3 times in my career. So getting traded sounded amazing. I was like,
you have value.
I said, somebody traded for
Somebody
me?
wants
I
me.
said, what'd they trade? What'd they give up? And he said, probably a bag of balls.
Marriott rewards points.
Yeah, so then I went in and I was in the cold tub with Brady and like Larry Izzo. And Izzo had heard I got traded because I knew I was going to be starting for Cleveland like in the next game because they had like LaCharles Bentley tore his knee up. So I'm in the cold tub and Izzo's like, what, are you going to piss in the cold tub before you leave? because he knew I was going to Cleveland. So I'll never forget, like the guys in the cold tub, like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I just got traded to Cleveland. And Brady and all the guys were like, wow, man, that sucks. I mean, I went from literally the best team to the worst team. And what people don't understand about football is I was thrilled. In New England, I was battling to be one of the backups. In a second, I got traded to Cleveland and I was their starting center. So like people, this would blow people's mind, but I was ecstatic that I got traded from the Patriots, the best team, to the Browns, the worst team, because that was the best move for me in my independent contractor NFL employee career.
Yes, in the business of Ross Tucker. The opposite of that is Joe Thomas. When I was in Cleveland, the Broncos were trying to trade for him the year they won the Super Bowl. And the whole day, Joe Thomas was, I'm talking about like close to tears all day because he did not want to leave Cleveland. Ultimately, the GM waited to the 4 p.m. deadline because he didn't want his legacy in Cleveland to be the guy that traded away Joe Thomas. But I'm like, Joe, you could have won a Super Bowl, but he was so like Cleveland, he didn't want to do it.
The one guy who wanted to stay.
He did not want to leave Cleveland. He was like devastated all day. Didn't say a word to anybody. Wasn't out to practice. Didn't eat lunch. Like you could see it in his face. And I had been there a couple of years, and I thought that was crazy because I'm like, Peyton Manning is calling you, asking you to go take a leak on the GM's desk just to get you there to win a Super Bowl. And he's like, nah, man, I'm Cleveland. So,
Ross, what did you get traded for?
The highest honor that any NFL player can receive, Dan, a conditional 7th-round pick, which is the lowest thing an NFL team can actually trade. Anytime a guy gets traded for a conditional 7th-round pick, I welcome him to the club. And by the way, the best part of the story is I go to Cleveland, I start the next 3 preseason games at center. On final cut day, they trade for Hank Fraley and cut me because they think Hank's better than me. So the Patriots didn't even get the 7th-round pick. The condition was not exercised.
They didn't want it, Ross.
The Ross Tucker Football Podcast presented by DraftKings, wherever it is you get your podcast. Thank you, Ross. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. You guys are a blast. Love listening to you. Thanks for having me.
See you, man.
I was stunned on a couple of fronts here. Something I learned yesterday. I'm hoping that the internet did not fool me. I'm stunned as well that it's taken this long in the show to get to it. Does anyone in this room know the name Troy Apke?
Can't say that I do.
No.
nope.
He is the first white cornerback in the NFL since 2003.
What?
He plays
Wow.
for the Washington Commanders.
Jason Sehorn?
What?
How is it that we have not talked about this more, celebrated it more? Have I been fooled by the internet? How is this allowed to happen quietly, that there is a white cornerback in the NFL? Jason Kelsey talked about this with Travis Kelsey on their podcast, where they're like, you know how hard a position cornerback is? An entire race of people cannot do it. Troy Apke
Funny.
can do it. Does Andrew Hawkins have an explanation for me as to why you played in the league for as long as you did and evidently were never covered by a white person?
Yeah, I corner. No, I was not. My entire career came and went without a white cornerback. I'm trying to think. I never even had one in like training camp. Not even when it was like 90-man roster part of the season. Just never. I don't have an explanation. Dustin Fox might have been a corner. That was like an 05. I don't.
Well, he might have been a corner, but evidently he didn't get snaps. He didn't get snaps.
There's a corner at Iowa, a white corner, who is legit. I don't know his name. Let's get some research. But my nephew played for Indiana a couple years ago, and this kid had like 2 pick sixes. They were trying to go at him, 2 pick sixes to the crib. I think he's like he could be a high round draft pick at corner, and that's when you'll hear
that's going to disorient people.
That's when it's going to blast all over sports media.
Dan, you watch Iowa football more than anybody I know. You don't know that guy?
I know their
You don't
defense.
know?
I know their defense is very good. I have not noticed that about them. I'm fixated.
I feel like you'd notice that.
I'm fixated on their offense, though. I got to be honest. I'm not watching
How bad it is?
their defensive possessions. I'm just trying to see what bad things their quarterback is going to do. Is there a way that we can do a national celebration about this? This is not something that should be done quietly. I don't believe I should be. I believe that this should be a household name.
There should be some graphics posted on Instagram for sure.
I mean, he's right. Listen, it's so rare that Dan is right. It probably should be celebrated. You want to try to get the guy on?
This is not something that should happen quietly. This is a story of achievement that needs to be celebrated. White Cornerback Month. NFL should have stenciling in the end zones.
We need to have a month for white people, man. I don't know what exactly.
Stickers on the back of the helmet.
Not
10
normal,
months out of the year.
Not normal
Not your
human
run-of-the-mill.
white people. No,
this is-
extraordinary white people. White
Norm
people.
busters.
White people who achieve like white people have never achieved. There are many ways I don't want to go back to the 1960s, but at the cornerback position, having a single white man out there trying to cover Andrew Hawkins is something that I enjoy thinking about. I'm still stuck. Hawk, on you saying that it filled you with a certain sadness seeing Tom Brady care about the particulars of moving his hips and the precision and the obsession of that, watching him for an hour take imaginary snaps and obsess over the snap. That seems to be a kind of obsession that would make it really hard for your wife when she's trying to get something that resembles presents from you at home.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And there's like a two-tier sadness. Sadness because it's like, man, I hope that he's able to find that passion in the next thing, right? Like I have enough athletes in my family and I've seen friends that it's tough to do because you spend your whole life into something. And none of the athletes that I know have ever dug in as much as Tom Brady has. There is no athlete maybe in the history of any sport that has dug into those details and obsession more than Tom Brady, but that's also why he reaps the benefits. So there was always a ceiling for me as an athlete because I could never get to that level. But when I was done, and maybe this is some psychological game I play with myself, that I was able to go into the next thing. For Tom, I'm curious. He's 45, and I think that's as a player, that's what I wonder. Right? Because it's always incredible to accomplish something nobody has ever done. When you accomplish everything and more than anybody has ever done, I know myself. I don't know if I'm able to keep going and fighting for it. Like, what is Tom Brady fighting for? He's the best. He's still better than everyone else. He's dealing with some stuff off the field right now, but like, he still knows the game better than everybody. And it's almost, even the last couple of seasons when he's done really well, we haven't even talked about him as much. We talked about Aaron Rodgers. We talked about Josh Allen. We talked about all the other people because even us, we get bored with it. Tom Brady throws for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns at 44 years old. And we're like, yeah, okay. Good job, Tom.
I can't believe that you're saying it because I have a special admiration for how people have to care to overcome everything you overcame to get to where you were at your size, where your body is not made for that sport at that size. So you must have cared in a way that was so unreasonable to the people around you in order to get there. And then you arrive in New England and you're like, oh, I don't really care. That's like, I care, but I don't care like that.
My issue was I accomplished my goal was to play one game in the National Football League. And then I was like, okay, I got there. I spent my whole life trying to get to one game. And I did it, and then I got a second contract, and then I played a number of years, but I was so far past my goal that it was tough for me to kind of just, like, reset. I never wanted to be a Pro Bowler. I never had a dream of winning a Super Bowl, winning an MVP. I could not believe that I played long enough for a contract. I tried to retire after my first year, Dan. My brother talked me out of it. He's like, what do you mean you're going to retire? I'm like, I did it. Everybody else was wrong, baby. Look at me. I'm on top of the mountain. I'm going to go get a job and move on with life. And he convinced me that you can get a pension. You can get a second contract. I'm like, you really think I could stick here long enough to... I felt like I tricked everybody.
Why were you trying to retire?
I accomplished what my goal was. So I was like, hey.
Just making it there?
Just making it. I just wanted to get to the NFL.
That was enough for you.
That was it.
Right.
Because I had spent my whole life, people telling me that would be impossible. So I just did the impossible. I was good. So for Tom Brady, I don't know what his impossible was, but I don't know what's beyond the best player ever. The consensus best football player of all time, the best quarterback to ever pick up the pigskin. If that's not enough, I don't know. Now that's where I'm like, I don't know what you're fighting for. I don't know what the goals are.
You had to be talked out of it because you had arrived at something that you considered a destination.
Yes.
And you also know the belly of the beast, right? Because I think people think it's a lot more glamorous and more fun than it is. And it is 16 Sundays, or 17 now.
Yeah.
But that's about it. It's the rest of the year is not a great deal of fun.
No. I mean, I would say outside of scoring touchdowns, most of it isn't like, oh, I'm having a great time running stadium steps for 2 hours every day and just, pounding weights constantly. It's exhausting after a while. And honestly, my first year in the NFL was my funnest year. Everything was business to me to that point. Like in high school, I was just worried about getting highlights so that I can get a scholarship. And in college, I'm like, am I doing enough to get an opportunity? Am I playing enough? Am I, putting enough on tape? And everything was transactional. I got to the, reality show, same thing. CFL, I'm like, I got to show that I can make contested catches so someone gives me an NFL workout. My first year in the NFL, I was just playing, and it was great. It was like no stress. I'm like, I'm here. I did it. And then after that year, I was like, yeah, that was everything I thought it would be. I'm done. I did it. I'm good. I don't think there's anything left for me to accomplish.
I want to play some sound for you from Sam Shields, the former Packers cornerback. He was on South Beach Sessions this week, and I urge you to listen to it because I haven't heard a football player talk this way with an element of heartbreaking sadness about, I would not do it again. And I'm imagining it's because of the prison inside his skull, because he was kept out of the sport for a couple of years because of concussions. And during this interview, there was one point that he forgot the name of a mentor, and I assume that it had something to do with the concussions. The entire 50 minutes or so is something that is illuminating, or was illuminating to me. But let's just hear a clip from that. I want to get Hawk's reaction to it. Would you do the whole thing over again?
Football?
Yes.
No. No. Nah. I'd be going to school trying to do work for home improvement. I'd be doing it. I'd be trying to learn how to build a house. It was fine, man. Like I said, I'll never take away from Drew Rosenhaus for helping me and supporting me throughout my career. Get me to that point. I'll never take that away from anybody, because it's hard to get there, and I was blessed enough to have that opportunity to get there from those guys, of talking to coaches. They did their job. They did it. I can't take that away from them.
Not unlike you, he didn't imagine when he left the University of Miami. He's walking off the field for the last time. He's been moved from wide receiver to cornerback, and he thinks his career is over. So he gets to the pros, and he's thrilled to merely be there because he didn't know if even he could get that far. That was your goal. You don't have any regrets about doing it, correct?
No, not even a little bit.
Have you heard that before? Because I don't hear warriors who don't examine consequences, because I've told you before, that to do what you do, you can't be sitting there measuring all the time the consequences, or you wouldn't do it. Have you heard a lot of athletes or a lot of football players say, if I had to do it over again, I would not?
Yeah, I've heard athletes say that. I've heard football players say that, of course, right? And I think that for me, again, I would love to say, oh, I'm so smart, or I've had people in my family that I've got to watch do it, and my whole goal was I wanted to try to do it differently. And I admittedly, in my NFL career, the entire time, I was also figuring out what I wanted to do next, right? And I think that for someone like me, I benefit from that, because my goal was only one game. Because I spent my whole life people telling me what I couldn't do. I was never highly rated. I was a one-star recruit. I went to Toledo. I paid my first semester because I didn't get a scholarship. I had to go to a reality show that I didn't win. I went to Canada. I didn't even start when I was on my CFL team. So I'm kind of in this walk on through the entirety of my football career. And once I made it there, it was like I was right. I knew I was talented enough, right? For a lot of other athletes, if you end up at Miami, you were the best in the country, especially at that time, especially playing wide receiver. If, once you get to the NFL, you've now gone from being a 4-star recruit. And if you're a 4-star recruit, you've been the best player since you've been in 4th grade. You get to college. If you've made it to the NFL, you're one of the best athletes at your college. You get to the NFL, and it kind of continues. So you have guys that now spend 20 years being the person that everybody's eyes go to when they walk in a room. They've only lived their life as the most important person in every room they walk into. They're the only person that everybody's always calling to check up on. Everyone's trying to get to. You're actually beating people off of you because you're like, hey, I don't have enough time to talk to and get to everybody who wants to be around me. And so in my experience, what I've seen a lot of times in that situation, it stops on top of, your knees hurt, your ankles hurt, you have the issues that come with the physicality of playing football. I know a lot of people that feel that way. For me, it's not the case, right? And that's why I was okay to leave after 1 year, because I never walk into a room and someone's like, oh, there goes Andrew Hawkins, the famous football player. People don't even know who I am half the time. More people know me now after my career than they do from me playing actual, professional football in the NFL.
Me and Whittingham have spent a good 15 minutes trying to put together a top 5 white cornerbacks all time in the NFL. I can't get past 4.
All right, let's do it right now. The top 4 white cornerbacks in the history of the NFL.
Number 4, Troy Apke.
Number 3,
Roger Worley. The Hall of Famer.
Number 2,
Dick LeBeau.
What year was Worley a Hall of Famer?
I have no idea.
Played from 1969 to 1982.
And the number 1 white cornerback of all time,
Jason Sehorn.
I don't think I like Jason Sehorn over Dick LeBeau. I think that's a little
Really?
disrespectful to
to get
LeBeau.
a 5, man.
That's because you're a Pennsylvania guy,
You're
though,
right.
right?
Yeah,
you grew up in Johnstown.
Man, Dick LeBeau, he's up here with me.
Roger Worley, by the way, the one picture I found of him on the internet playing, he was wearing one of those 1-bar helmets that Gary Anderson used to wear. That's what white cornerbacks used to look like.
It's probably the first year they introduced it too. That was probably.
What was that going to protect? What was the point of the 1-bar helmet for a non-kicker? I get it for a kicker, but for every other player in the field, why was that ever an innovation that was allowed?
I don't think we knew at the time just how much head protection was required in that sport. I think that they thought that the 1-bar would be helpful. I don't understand why it is that we're not celebrating this more as a nation. That Troy Apke has persevered.
I just did. He's in my top 4.
I know.
He was just signed from the practice squad. This Apke player has not played an NFL snap yet. So
Okay, so that's
maybe he'll get on the
probably
field
why.
this
I'm
weekend.
projecting.
I imagine we'll see
He's
him on
actually
special
never played in the
teams.
NFL.
Regardless,
He's not an active roster.
Honestly, I think Hawk is the
confetti.
point. Hawk is the point. This Riley Moss for Iowa, I read a mock draft where he's projected to be a 3rd-round pick. That's going to be I'm going to watch day 2 of the NFL draft just to see when this guy gets taken.
A white corner projected in the 3rd round. That's like Mario Williams again. That's like he's like.
I feel like you guys are trying to diminish an achievement by telling me he hasn't played an NFL snap yet. He was signed from a practice squad, and I will not allow you guys on a day of joyous celebration to bring your negativity here. He's not going to actually play, is he?
How long has he been in the NFL? When did he come out?
Well, it says here his Pro Football Reference page says that he has played in games before for Washington, but they list him at free safety and a DB. So this most recent release,
Changes everything.
has him as they list him as a corner, but I guess he's played safety before, because otherwise he would count as a white cornerback. But his Pro Football Reference page lists him as a safety, so there's perhaps
some discrepancy there. He rocks number 30. So when he gets in at corner, that's when we celebrate. Because he could still play and they put him at safety. I've seen white safeties. I've seen a lot of white safeties. That is
some of the all-time greats. Yes,
can we get a top 5 white safety that's going?
Oh, I can't believe you asked.
Yeah, I think that's. I think we're all been waiting for
He's a piano bar now. We are not sure if he's going to play. Can we do some reporting on this? Can we get some more?
I'm on it.
You are searching the internet right now.
Apke, also a Pennsylvania guy. I think I read on his Wikipedia.
Penn State.
There you go.
A 4th-round pick. Is this going to be not unlike the NBA sometimes? This has now changed, but in the last few years, whenever, because we don't tend to know some of the draft prospects, especially the international ones, whenever a team drafts a guy from another country who's 7'1" and very skinny and white, the fan base just assumes that he's not going to turn out to be a player. Are you guys telling me that when this Iowa cornerback gets drafted, that an entire fan base is going to be like, what did we just do?
No, I think it's going to be I think they're going to celebrate. Riley Moss, he's legit, and he is a corner, and he He's been locking down.
He stood out to you for
years ago. I sent this tweet. I don't know if I still have it. I might have deleted it. But I sent the tweet out about him years ago.
Why would you have deleted that?
It's one of those.
You're covering for the fact you didn't actually tweet this.
You know,
might have texted it to somebody. Who's this white guy covering for Iowa? I'm on it.
It's third rail stuff, man. He had to delete the tweet because he didn't know who was going to go through his past.
Exactly, man. Let's see if I can find it. I don't know. Somebody else search it for me. But yeah, no, he's legit.
Witty's on it. I mean, it is kind of one of those things. I'm opting out of this conversation.
Why?
Good decision. Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack here.
I'm ready to go.
Top 5 safeties that quickly? White safeties of all time.
You find them everywhere.
So many.
Number 5.
Eric Weddle.
Number 4.
Number 4 is oh no, I got this one wrong. Charlie Waters.
What just happened? Number 3.
John Lynch.
Number 2.
Gary Fensick. One of the all-time greats, Fensick.
Number 1.
Yale Larry. Hall of Fame safety from the Colts back in the 60s.
I can confirm that Andrew Hawkins tweeted about this Iowa corner. Quote, I called my wife to ask how the Indiana game was going. Parenthetically, our nephew plays for them. And she was like, not good. Iowa has a cornerback who is locking down. He has 2 pick sixes in the first half. I'd look up the film, and sure enough, he is a baller. But I was surprised because he's white.
I didn't expect it. My own stereotypes in my mind created a profile of a player. It was a learning moment for me.
Should have deleted it.